This is Stephen Frew. We're doing a series around the idea of seeing the two major phases in marriage as a way of claiming marriage from a completely different perspective. And to do that, we have to do some, pulling apart of old ideas and some critical evaluation of how we think about marriage, that kind of thing. So today I want to focus a little bit on the idea of the orphan and what the orphan brings to marriage. We all kind of have maybe an intuitive understanding of our own inner orphan, but I think it helps to take a look at it from the perspective of life and of our children. If you think about a child, one of your child, a child they start out with a 360-degree view of the world. They experience just about everything, see just about everything, uh, and experience the joy that life brings when you're not analyzing it or criticizing it or worried about it. The child brings that heartfulness, is why the prophet Jesus said, if you want to know what the kingdom of heaven is like, study a child. And that's pretty much right on the money for me. That child isn't editing out. That child isn't shamed. That child isn't worried. That child isn't managing. That child is what we call being. Now, that's the healthy child. But over the next 10 or 14, 15 years, that child is going to be shamed. You spilled your milk. Why weren't you careful? Or that child is going to be suppressed. Don't talk like that to your mother. Don't talk back to your teacher. Or that child is going to be managed, teach him how to be her or him, how to be angry, how not to be angry. There's a lot of learning that goes on as children develop between birth and adolescence. What adolescence is the first major opportunity for self-expression, really, like for uh, accessing my birthright, for this is who I am, this is what I think, this is how I feel, this is who I love. That's the adolescent experience. That's a very critical idea when we're talking about the orphan, because if you're living in the old patterns, if you're living with shaming or suppressing or management of your feelings, if the adults around you want you to be certain way, then you're learning performative behaviors. And you look like that in adolescence. And something will come along in adolescence that make you say, I don't want to be performative anymore. I want to think what I think. I want to love who I love and the way I love. You can see it sometimes in cultural trends like makeup and, clothes that teenagers wear as a way of saying, this is me, I'm not you. You're you, I'm me, and that's what I'm establishing. Now, if a teenager isn't able to go through that and slips on into adulthood, still being a performative person, still pleasing the Power Rangers around her or the Power Rangers around him, that's teachers, parents, pastors, rabbis, priests, whoever the Power Rangers are. If the teenager doesn't break with that, he doesn't break with that entourage, what the teenager winds up doing is slipping into adulthood, continuing the performative behaviors and becoming a culturally accepted person. They get married. Now that we're going to say that performative based shaping of your own behavior, we're going to call that something. We're going to call that the orphan, because that orphan doesn't within you does not have confidence in their own laughter, confidence in their own creativity, confidence in their own initiative. They don't have confidence in their own choices for the most part. They are adaptive. They learn to adapt to the Power Rangers around them, and pretty soon that becomes a boss or whatever, a community, a culture. It also can become a partner. So to make all this as simple as possible, they marry and they repeat that kind of orphan adaptation and adjustment and being a nice guy or being a good girl kind of life. And their life works. They have children, children go to school, they kind of repeat the same stuff with those kids. Now, somewhere along midlife, the second adolescent occurs. The second adolescence is a chance to say, who am I? And why am I? And where am I? What am I doing here? And that is the time when a lot of marriages fail because we make a huge mistake. There are some marriages, let me just say, without going into it, we'll go into another podcast, but I want to come back to this. There are some marriages that are made in heaven. They just work. There are some marriages that are made in hell. They never work. And then that's the two ends of the stream. But then there's some marriages that we call marginal marriages. Those marriages are always, they're adapting and adjusting and making it. But in midlife, one or the other starts to say, I wonder if I ever loved you. I wonder if we have love. I think I want to change. I want to do this. I want to go. And in that desire that's bubbling up in 40s and 50s and maybe even early 60s, that is a self-expression, a desire for self-expression. And a lot of marriages end in divorce there. And the divorce, we're going to call it, in another podcast, a future podcast, why I do this, but make a note of it. We're going to call it the divorce in that situation is an abortion because it aborts the promise made at the beginning when the cosmic love event happened, when you were flooded with hormones, when you thought you were in love, when everything seemed right. That I'm calling the cosmic love event. And what happens over the years is that slowly gets suppressed, goes down underneath, and you are performative and making sure the kids get to school and making sure you have taken care of your career, making sure you're working out, making sure you're saving money for retirement. Oh, excuse me, all of that first phase in marriage is being tended to. And then in midlife, you get to say, what's it all about? It was a song, What's It All About, Alfie, about 50 years ago. What's it all about? What is my why? What is my who am I? Those kind of things start to come up, and you have the opportunity to access your birthright, the reason you're here on the planet in the first place. This is Stephen Frew. We'll continue this series. I'm going to enjoy it with you. Let me know. Text me 805-338-4286 if you have comments or things you'd like to see talked about further.